Hey everyone, welcome to the Executive Edge podcast. I'm Johannigman, founder of Potential Unleashed Consulting. I sit down with founders, executives, and high performers to unpack what really gives leaders their executive edge. In a world where everyone has access to the same tools and information, what actually separates the exceptional from the average? Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Executive Edge. I am so happy and excited for our guest today to be here with us. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm really, really excited. I mean, just our getting to know each other in the pre-interview, has already really set the stage for me on some of the great things we're going to discuss today. So, with that said, I always like to jump in with this question, and that is, in your opinion, what should leaders be thinking about today?
And as we discussed a little bit earlier, people are worried about a lot of things like AI and technology and the changing global economy and so on. But I really think that losing the focus on what you're here for, losing the focus on why are we doing what we're doing is really dangerous. I think that we're in a world that is getting harder and harder to feel optimistic about. And I think that if you can get up every morning and say, I'm going to make a difference in somebody's life today, you can ignore all of the noise, you can ignore all of the politics, you can ignore everything else that's going on around you, and feel good at the end of the day if you can go to bed saying, I made a positive difference in somebody's life.
Yeah.
And not lose sight of that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jeff. So often I hear from leaders that they can feel overwhelmed, or when they're trying to do something like that, it just feels like there's so much coming at them. And I love the approach that you just gave of kind of focusing in on this one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how that focus can really, again, it's something that we can control and it's not overwhelming.
One thing.
Yeah, the one thing. I love that. I haven't heard that much, but I love that. I can definitely understand why focusing on that one thing can completely change the mindset of someone for the entire day. So
I didn't come up with that idea. I borrowed it from the movie City Slickers. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
So go watch that again.
No, I love that. I love that. Well, Jeff, as I mentioned, there's so many things that I'm excited to speak to you about today from your experiences, and one of those would be you in your own personal life and career made a pretty significant change and transition in industries. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Why the change, and how did you land, in the type of career that you're in today?
Sure. As you can probably tell, I've had a long career, but it began back in the 80s when I graduated with a degree in computer science and decided to get into the very early stages of the computer game industry. My very first game was published on a 16K Atari 800 with a cassette tape drive. So I spent most of the 80s and some of the 90s working my way up from programmer to designer to producer in that industry, and probably worked on at least 24 published games. But eventually I got to a point of thinking about what's my real purpose? How am I making an impact on people's lives? And this struck me when I was reading a very glowing review in a magazine for one of the games I was producer on, a game called Master of Orion. And the reviewer said, Master of Orion is a sure candidate for Game of the Year and will be Exhibit A in several divorce cases. Well, that's kind of funny. And everybody else around the company really loved it and chuckled at the idea. But it makes you step back and think about what am I doing for people's lives? How am I enriching people's lives? And am I really all about creating high-tech addiction for people?
Wow.
And I realized that the highest praise we usually sought to get from most of our customers were guys going, dude, your game is awesome. I couldn't stop playing. I was up all night. I called in sick the next day at work. My old lady was ready to throw me out. You don't want to know how many hours I wasted on your game. It's wonderful. I start doing the math and thinking about, add up the number of hours times the number of customers that were going into it and realize there's several hundreds of lifetimes that were
Yeah.
spent on something that's fairly meaningless in many ways and not connecting with other people. And that kind of started my thought process that ended up in me deciding to change careers after about 12, 15 years in the computer game business.
I have some follow-up questions to that, but before
Okay.
we even go there, it's just making me think about where we see our world today, especially with social media.
Oh,
And
yeah,
wow,
absolutely.
what could this world be if people? Because I can see easily that that is the goal, right? Like you said, it is to get people addicted, and wow, the more
Mhm.
hours people spend playing this game or on this
Yeah.
app, that is great success. But what is it doing
Hmm. And then
to?
people are just living their lives like this.
Right. One of our
Hmm.
clients is a university, and we were having a conversation maybe about 7, 8 years ago, right before the pandemic, and they were saying that they were having this unique challenge of getting students to connect with students.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about how at the time, when I was in college, and that was, if you wanted connection, you had to connect in person, right? You had to go to some
Yeah.
of the corny functions that they put on in the dorm. You had to go,
Hmm.
and do these things. And they were saying that they were still doing those activities, and they had tried to update the activities, make them cool and everything else. But people would say, "Hey, I'm not coming." And they would say, "Well, it's important for you for your own personal mental health and everything else." And they would say, "I got everyone who I need to connect with right here."
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's just, yeah, so
And the
interesting.
problem is it's a self-selected bubble.
Yeah,
You are only interacting with the people who share the same perspectives and viewpoints and opinions that you do.
yeah,
And
so
one of
true.
my mentors believed that the breakdown of society began when we invented the automobile and no longer had to walk to town and
Mm,
interact with people who were walking to town the same way that you were.
right,
You now were safely enclosed in a metal and glass cocoon
right,
and didn't have to interact with people.
right. Yeah, could just turn on the radio and not even
Hmm.
drive right past the people walking, right, without even saying
Yep.
hello. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
So,
Jeff, in that, I know you also landed in the nonprofit world. How
hmm
did you make that decision? So one thing to say, okay, this isn't maybe the right company for me, maybe this isn't the right industry for me. How did you, and I think a lot of leaders would be interested in this,
hmm
because I've spoken with leaders who sometimes have felt maybe this isn't the right space for me, the right industry, but the fear of, but how do I figure out or find something that really resonates with me? So sometimes they just jump from one job to another job that still isn't the right fit. How did you
hmm
figure out this was right for you?
Well, it wasn't a direct jump from gaming into nonprofit for
Okay.
starters. It,
Okay.
it took me a few years to really get the wisdom to go, okay, this is where you're really going to be happiest. And it took years of me working with my clients to figure out how they can find that connection. And ultimately, if you got a couple minutes, I found there were
Yeah.
four critical things for people to find fulfillment and meaning in their career. And I call it aligning your career, kids. It's kind of like the four tires on your car. If three of those tires are great and the fourth one is flat, you're still not having a good ride,
That's right.
right? So the first one are your physical needs. Is it paying you well enough to put food on the table and pay the rent? Without that, nothing else matters,
Mm,
right? Second one are the social emotional needs. Am I working with and for people that I like, that I get along with, or am I in a toxic environment with people who you can't trust and everything is political and self-serving? And if that's wrong, you're not going to be happy.
mm-hmm.
The third are the intellectual needs. Am I being challenged? Am I getting to grow? Am I getting to face new things and learn new things in my work? And the fourth thing, which is the one that people often overlook, because once you've gotten a job that pays you well, you're working with good people, you're feeling challenged, some people try to feel like, okay, that's all I need. And you kind of tough it out, work ethic every day, and thank God it's Friday, yada, yada, yada. But the fourth one is your need for purpose.
Mm.
The fourth one is kind of a spiritual need. The fourth one is the need to feel like I'm working for something that's going to make a difference in the world
Yeah.
somehow or another. And the tricky part for most people in their careers is that they start in the order of, I got to make money. Oh, okay, then I want to work with some people that I like and so on. They work their way 1, 2, 3, and never quite get to 4. And the people who start by focusing on what do I want to make a difference with? What's my real sense of purpose? And then ask the questions of, okay, what skills do I bring to the table? Who do I want to work with? And how do I make money at it? After you figure out the spiritual part, the purpose part,
Yeah.
those are the ones that can really feel fulfilled, and ultimately the other parts you become more successful at.
Mm.
Because without that sense of purpose, what's fueling your work is work ethic.
Yep.
It's, I've got to put in a good day's work for a good day's pay, yada, 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 like we were all taught. When you're fueled by seeing the difference you make in the world, that's a much more powerful fuel. That's a self-sustaining fuel. And that really helps you to get more innovative and get more creative and get more confident in meeting all the other 3 parts.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. There's a framework that I was taught by Father Bob Spitzer, and it's called the 4 levels of happiness, and it's
Ooh,
very aligned to that as well.
4
Where,
levels of happiness. Okay.
yeah, and as he explains it, each level, call them H1, H2, H3, and H4, and as you move through each level, the happiness lasts longer and
Yeah.
the community impact is greater. And
And what
so,
was it? The author's name again was Bob
Father Bob Spitzer,
Spitzer,
yeah,
Spitzer.
yep, you got it.
Thank
And
you.
so, yeah, so it makes great sense to me because that fourth level, H4, is all about purpose. And so, like you
Right.
said, it's that spiritual piece. It is what is the legacy that I'm leaving behind. And as you were talking, I was thinking about how many people, not only do they not get there or explore that, but how many people have possibly intentionally blocked that question off
Mm-hmm.
intentionally because they're making enough money, right? Or they're making really good money and,
Yeah.
they really like their team and everything else. And I've heard people say, well, I don't really have to think about the other piece, right? That's not my problem. And if I didn't do the
Mm-hmm.
job, someone else would do the job and all those different things. And it's like, yeah, one of my mentors, his name is Dave Saby. When I first met him, I really appreciated what he said. I was young. I was about 25 years old, and Dave has done a lot of great things in the world. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
I only build or invest in businesses that make people better. And it goes to that,
That's a
right?
nice focus. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I've had opportunities to do other things. He said, I could build a tavern down the street, right? And he was just talking
Mm-hmm.
about all these different things. And he said, I'm not against people going to taverns or anything like that. He said, like, he said, but that's just not what I want to do as a business, right?
No.
And I think it's similar to what you were mentioning about those things. He's like, I could build a casino, right? And I could do all these different things. And he said, people
Mm-hmm.
come to me, people have brought these opportunities to me. He said, but I only invest in or build businesses that I know are good for people and put good into the world. So,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about people becoming kind of complacent in jobs that are not the right fit for them, in between the work I did in the game industry and working now for nonprofits, I spent quite a few years doing outplacement consulting.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever worked with an outplacement consultant or worked with an
I
outplacement
sure
firm.
have.
Hopefully, never. Okay. So you're familiar. I don't know which firm you may have worked with, but for those of you who are listening out there and have never, what is an outplacement firm? These are the companies that get hired and contracted with by large corporations like IBM or Dell or Motorola or whatever, that when they do a layoff, they include an outplacement consultant as part of the severance package. And so oftentimes I got to be there on site the day that an employee learned, I'm sorry, but your job is going away.
Yeah.
Here's what you're going to get: 6 months of severance. You're going to get your health care, your COBRA, whatever. And let me take you down the hall to meet with your outplacement consultant. So I got to meet with people like 5 minutes after so they had the rug pulled out
Yep.
from under them. But ultimately, I started looking at the question of why was this person picked and that person kept their job? Why did they let Susan go and they kept Joan? Or why did they let John go and keep Mark in that process? And when I started coaching these people and talking to them, the common element I found most often was these people would say, yeah, I was no longer in love with my job.
Mm.
I no longer really felt passionate. I no longer really felt like I was making a difference, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I felt too comfortable where I was at to make a change and so on. So I really came to believe that the layoff is the universe's way of kicking you in the ass and telling you, son, you're supposed to be someplace else. And if you ain't going to get there, I'm going to force you to go there.
Yeah.
And my job when working with all these people, my goal was for them to, a few months later, be able to say, Jeff, getting laid off was kick in the gut. It was painful as hell. But today I'm someplace where I'm happier. I'm being more fulfilled. I'm doing something that gives me more of a sense of purpose. It connects me with my passion. And that's what made that job worth doing.
Wow.
And I could connect with those people through the layoffs because of my experience, believe it or not, my experience in the game industry.
Mm-hmm.
Game industry is amazingly unstable. My first 2 years out of college, I went through 3 layoffs, laid off 3 different times,
Yeah.
fresh out of college. And they didn't give you 6 months worth of severance. They give you a check for 2 weeks and a pat on the back and a hearty good luck, son.
Right.
So I learned how to find a new job very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, Jeff, as you're telling that, as you're giving that story and that reflection, it resonates so much with me. And this is, not scripted, but as you're talking, I'm like, that's exactly what happened to me. It's how I
Oh,
started
really?
this true story. I was working for an organization, and it was all the first 3 things that you said. I mean, the
Paid
money
well?
was great. Yep, paid well. The people were amazing. I loved the team that I worked for and worked with. I mean, like all of those things were just
Mm-hmm.
top notch. And I remember I began doing some consulting on the side, and I was taking a trip, flying back home from one of those things, and I had this different feeling of this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I get back home and I tell my wife, this is in March, and I say, hey, I think in August, I'm going to start trying to build this consulting business. And she's like, really? Right? Because it was all the things, Jeff, right? Like I had a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful office in Seattle, Washington. I had a home office. I had a company car. The job was
That's
just,
cushy.
yeah, it was really cushy. And again, I had the most amazing supervisors. I had the most amazing team. I had a great support, like all those things. But there was something about the workshop that I delivered that I felt I was doing good for other people in a different way.
Yeah.
Long story short, we have a huge
Mm-hmm.
layoff, right? Across the company. And the HR representative, who is kind of letting me know that this is what's happening and everything else,
Yeah.
says, do you have a couple more minutes? I said, yes. She says, I'm going to call you from this number. She gives me the number. Please answer. She
Mm-hmm.
hangs up the phone. She calls me right back from another line and says, hey, earlier when you first started, you came to us and asked us to run a conflict of interest check because I was already public speaking, doing some of these things. And I wanted to make sure there was
Okay.
no conflict of interest
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that. And she said, first off, that always impressed me because most people do not come forward and nominate themselves for a conflict of interest
Right. They
investigation,
wait
right?
until somebody turned it up and then you got to explain yourself.
Yeah. And she says to me, doing that process, I got a chance to really review like your public speaking and other things and talk to some of your clients. And she says to me this, Jeff, she says, you're going to get a really good severance package and you're going to meet with, the company, the firm that we've hired, and they're going to tell you you're going to get hired because at the time I think I was 28, you're going to get hired right away. your age, the position that you had inside of the company, and everything
Oh,
else.
so you were doing these kind of speeches and presentations at 28?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's great work. Yeah.
And she says to me, the reason why I'm calling you from this other line is because I don't think that's what the world has for you. And I said, what? And she said, I think this is an opportunity for you to find out what you truly love and to do what you truly love. And she said, and from my investigation, I realized this is your passion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's maybe
Yeah.
this is your opportunity. I would have never, like, already in my head, I was already thinking about the next job, right? Like,
Hmm.
okay, I've got to
Hmm.
get my resume together and everything else. And when she said that to me, it brought me back to the conversation I had had with my wife just a month previous, right? Saying, hey, I think in August, and here now is April, but that's what gave me that kick in the butt, as you said, to actually
Yeah.
start this firm. So I've never gone back and really reflected on it like that until you just said that. So thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the universe just has to kick you in the rear to
Yeah.
get you to where you're supposed to be in that process.
Yeah. Because
So
I've never thought about it from that lens, as you mentioned. Like, it had the other three, right?
mhm.
And it was, so it was good. It was a good life, right? But I was not completely fulfilled because, and this is why I was actually doing the work on the side. I was looking for that other thing, that purpose that you mentioned. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this question, Jeff, based off of that. Any tips that you could give someone who might be fearful? They're listening right now and they're thinking to themselves, "Gosh, that's me." But I'm in leadership. I'm in a position that most people would want. I've worked
Mhm.
hard to be here. My family is proud of me. This is what the roadmap told me I was supposed to do. But I know I'm unfulfilled. But I'm so afraid to make the jump. Any tips or strategies you would give them?
Right. I've run a lot of workshops on the topic of making those changes.
Hmm.
And I'm also a big, huge movie buff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I run a clip that comes out of the third Indiana Jones movie, the one with his father in it, Sean Connery.
Yep.
And he's toward the end, his father's been shot. He has to go find the grail to save his father's life. And he's got his father's journal. And he gets to this point in the caves, where the grail is, where he's on the edge of a big chasm before him. Is this ringing a bell?
Yeah.
You've
Oh,
seen
yes.
the movie?
I'm a huge fan of this movie. Yes.
Really deep chasm, and there's apparently no way across. And he looks at his father's journal, and he sees somebody stepping out into standing on air, nothing.
Yep.
And he shakes his head and kind of goes, "Okay, it's a leap of faith.
Yeah.
It's a leap of faith." And then he steps out, starts to fall forward. Then his foot hits on a bridge that is very nicely camouflaged
Yes.
and painted in a way that you can't really see it from where he was standing. And I recognize the fact that most people don't want to take a step
Mm.
until they see the entire path, until they see A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I will get there by the time I hit step G. And life doesn't give you the whole path all at once.
Right.
Life may show you step A, and if you're lucky, step B. And you got to kind of take it on faith that if I'm going to get to where I want to be, I got to at least move from where I am onto step A and then onto step B and then see what emerges. So you got to make your plan one step at a time and recognize that sometimes it's going to feel like I'm stepping backwards
Mm.
to be able to find the right path forward.
Mm.
So you have to start moving. I'm also always been a big advocate of the ready, fire, aim
Yeah.
methodology.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I've seen too many people who will do ready, aim, 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 aim. I'm not ready to fire yet. Aim,
Yeah.
aim. No, we can't. No, I got to keep aim. No. So, do a little bit of prep, figure out the rough general direction you're trying to head, figure out one next step to get there, take that step, and then see what new ideas and what new clues emerge in that process. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's going to feel like you're taking a step backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I feel like we could spend, 5 more minutes on just that piece of what do you do when you feel like you're taking a step backwards. Um, wow, thanks, Jeff. Thank you for
Mhm.
those tips. Those
Go
that,
rewatch Indiana Jones.
yeah, oh yeah. And, that's one of those movies that even if I catch it halfway, I'm gonna watch it. Right?
Yeah, it's a
Um,
comfort movie.
it is. It truly
Yeah.
is.
The
And
other the other movie that I love, and I go back to one particular scene from. There's a wonderful movie called Up in the Air with George Clooney in it, playing
oh, the one
essentially
where he's flying all the time, correct?
he's flying all the time to tell people that their jobs have been
Yes.
eliminated,
Yes.
to be similar to what I used to do. Um, and he's got this wonderful scene with J.K. Simmons, who is very upset and very angry about being laid off from his job in accounting.
Hmm.
And Clooney looks at him and says, "Well, looking at your background, you graduated with a degree in a fine culinary school, one of the best culinary schools in the country. You could have become a chef. So tell me, how much did they pay you to give up on your dream?"
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that, but that
I do.
that one resonated with me so much.
Yeah.
It reminded me so much of the work I got to do when I was doing outplacement work, of helping people recognize that they lost sight of their dream in favor of the steady paycheck. And
Yeah.
you know,
Wow. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah. Wow. What a powerful question, again, and for everyone who's listening, to really do that reflection and think about that for ourselves, because again, we might find jobs, careers, positions that offer us,
mhm.
the first two or maybe even the first three, but is it answering the fourth? And is it truly the dream? Or did we get comfortable? Did we move into this? Um, I heard
I,
this.
I, I like I love getting to do both, giving people life guidance and movie recommendations at the same time.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and you're great at both.
Mhm. We were just talking before about the Princess Bride, which
Right.
anybody out there who hasn't seen it, what are you waiting for?
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I just looked up at the time, and we are getting ready to close. Unfortunately,
Wow,
already.
that was quick.
I know. I know.
And
So
you were going to ask me how I got into nonprofit, and we haven't touched that
I
yet.
know. I know. I'm already seeing a second episode coming for this. So thank you. As we close, two questions I always close with are, and you can choose both or pick one or the other, but if you could give advice to yourself earlier on in your leadership journey, what advice would you have given yourself? And then the second question is, if you were to recommend a book, what book might that be?
Okay, I will answer the second one first because
Okay.
it's short. As a career coach, probably the single most useful book I found in giving me tools and techniques and exercises and inspiration is What Color is Your Parachute? And I was privileged enough to meet the author of Parachute, Richard Bowles, years and years ago. And he was one of the few people I've ever seen actually been able to see the twinkle in his eye of a man who had found his bliss, his calling, which was the mission to do that book and revise that book every single year and rewrite and republish it. So, What Color's Your Parachute is the book. The other bit of advice in general that I would give is I find that what I most often do in my work is help people reconnect to the passions that you felt when you were a child, when you were younger. That was when you could be truest to what your heart was telling you to do.
Yeah.
And then figure out how do you connect from there to where you are today. And one of the examples of that goes back in my life. If you'd asked me when I was 10, 11 years old, what are you going to be when you grow up, Jeff?
Hmm.
I was planning on becoming a priest. And then puberty arrived. And I went, wait a second, I got to take a vow of what?
Right.
So I kind of changed the plans there. Got married, had kids, took the vow of poverty instead. But but years later, I get to be a career coach and I get to do workshops, and I find myself standing in front of rooms full of people, helping them find meaning and purpose in their lives.
Yeah.
And I go, damn, I'm doing the work I thought I was going to do when I was 10, except without the collar.
Yeah.
So reconnect to the young person that was passionate about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said and great advice. I wanted to be an educator, wanted to be a teacher, and then decided
Yeah.
I did not want to take the vow of poverty at that time, and so changed. Right. And it's amazing that my career has brought me to now. I get to take my classroom into different environments, right? I get to go and
Yeah.
teach in different organizations and different places, and so I can really see how that connects, Jeff. So thank you so much for everything today. I mean, so much great wisdom. I appreciate so much the 4 steps. I've never heard that before, and I could see that resonating with so many people because it definitely resonated with me. And then also that, I mean, so much, but even that, I'm just recapping so people can think about what's your first step, and
Mhm.
what is that first step, and
What's the one thing you can do next that
yeah.
moves you a little bit closer?
Yeah. So Jeff, thank you so much for everything, for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts with us. I look forward to it. And folks, if Jeff, if people wanted to learn more about your workshops that you mentioned and things of that nature, is there somewhere that they could find you?
If you can spell Johannigman correctly, you can find me. I'm easy to Google. I'm on LinkedIn, but I also have a website called People Type, Peopletype, one word, peopletype.com. And that's my side gig practice in doing career coaching and training work.
Yeah.
And you can find me there too. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Folks, thanks for listening in. Jeff, thank you again for sharing your time with us.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.